Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many of you joining us this morning, and I am very happy to be kicking off the forum for session one. As Tin said, my name is Natalie Campbell, and I work for MRLG. For this presentation, I'd like to discuss some key principles of customary tenure. We've heard some people mentioning customary tenure in the introductions, so I'd like to go a little deeper into that concept. I will then also speak about why customary tenure is important in the Mekong region. Customary tenure. Customary tenure has so many definitions. In fact, one key characteristic of customary tenure is that it's hard to define. So I'll share some overarching principles of customary tenure, but unfortunately, due to time constraints, won't be able to cover everything. Please keep in mind that customary tenure looks very different in the context within where it is practiced. So customary land tenure is what we're referring to as customary tenure. It is a set of rules, norms, institutions, practices, and procedures that have been created by communities and that have evolved over time. These rules and norms govern the allocation, use, access, and transfer of land and other natural resources. We refer to customary tenure systems to highlight sorry, could you click through the slide? To highlight the complexity of these practices. Many ask, what does customary tenure look like actually, and where is it practiced? Customary tenure systems are practiced on and within diverse landscapes, ranging from agricultural land to forest land to grazing areas to water bodies to even areas above and below land for spiritual practices. Click. Oh, okay. So all of these different parts, these different words here are different concepts that are affiliated with customary tenure, and they're all equally important. But what I want to highlight here is that there's a great diversity in customary tenure, and it's often very difficult to allocate one set of characteristics to a customary tenure system. Within these landscapes, there are various bundles of rights that are allocated over different parcels and different areas of land. Customary tenure systems contain different bundle of rights and different combinations of rights. So which we refer to as a spectrum of rights. What are the different rights between these systems? There are the rights to access, duration, inclusion, management, alienation, withdrawal, and due compensation. So these rights are allocated to one area of land and various other areas of land, and they are often overlapping. They are granted to either individuals or communities or everything in between. And they are directly linked to the governance of land. These systems are highly flexible. They're continuously negotiated on and sustained and changed by local communities. They're often changed as a response to political, social, and environmental circumstances, which demonstrates their resilience and their adaptability. Again, before moving on, keep in mind that customary tenure does look different depending on the context where it's practiced. I would like to share with you 4 dimensions of customary tenure. Please go to the next slide. In the Mekong region. Okay. The first is communities. There is no community without customary tenure. There is no customary tenure without communities. The two are inseparably linked. The Mekong region is an incredibly diverse area with over 200 ethnic groups who are part of the 70+ million people who Micah mentioned earlier, including local communities who depend on forests for their livelihoods. The second dimension that I'd like to highlight here is robust landscapes. We just talked about the different landscapes that exist in customary tenure systems: forest, agricultural, grazing areas, etc. A key part of customary tenure in the Mekong region are these robust landscapes. One common form of customary tenure in the Mekong region is rotational agroforestry systems, or shifting cultivation. This is demonstrated by the lovely picture you see here on the side of the slide. And so, as many of you know, customary rotational agroforestry systems are often conducted in upland areas. And essentially, this practice is where fields are rotated rather than crops. And after this harvesting period, the land is left fallow to restore the nutrients, and the cycle continues. Now, one thing I'd like to mention here is that these rights drastically vary over who can conduct shifting cultivation where. And normally they're under a mix of individual and communal customary tenure practices. The next thing I'd like to highlight is an extremely important part of customary tenure, and actually something when discussing and working with Indigenous peoples and local communities, they're often highlighted as the most important part of customary tenure, and that is spiritual and traditional linkages. We know in the Mekong, these traditional practices are deeply rooted in customary-based management systems. Often we can use this example and we can say that traditional systems of land management on shifting cultivation is extremely essential for the communities. And beyond that, the spiritual belief and connection to the land is extremely intimately linked to these systems and is often inseparable. The last dimension I'd like to mention are the livelihood opportunities. The right to benefit financially from land is critical for communities in the region. If communities are able to create, for example, forest enterprises from which they can generate economic benefit, this encourages and enables them to invest in long-term management of these forests, engage with economic actors, and increases overall well-being for the communities and the forest. The increasing demand for land for investment and conservation reinforces the importance of the recognition of rights of communities living on the land. These processes require clarification of rights and responsibilities to ensure equitable benefit sharing and partnerships, to mitigate risks and to support the sustainability of investments. I'd like you to keep these 4 dimensions in your mind throughout the forum, as they are keys to improving land tenure governance. I will now go through a regional snapshot to share some regional context to set the stage for our discussions today. In Cambodia, there are multiple avenues for the formalization of communal land rights. Some are customary and they take multiple forms. Indigenous peoples are eligible to apply to receive community land titles, or CLTs, hailed as being one of the most progressive policies in the region, yet the process is overly complex, expensive, and slow, so it has been relatively inaccessible for Indigenous communities. Local communities who do not meet the criteria for Indigenous are not eligible for the community land titles. Under the Protected Areas Law, which covers a large part of Cambodia's forest areas, all protected areas are required to be zoned into 4 different zones for effective management. Communities should have limited rights over community zones and sustainable use zones through the designation of community protected areas. However, customary tenure practices are not included in zoning processes, so communities are often lacking their customary tenure rights. In Cambodia, our MRLG Alliance is working to increase recognition and protection of local communities in protected areas by conducting inclusive protected area zoning procedures, and customary tenure documentation. In Laos, while customary and collective tenure is practiced in forest areas and over 3,000 villages are located inside forest areas, there have historically been few avenues to fully formalize communities' forest rights. Planning procedures such as land use planning and village forest management planning have granted limited rights to communities in forests. However, these procedures often fail to grant a robust bundle of rights to communities, leaving them vulnerable. The newly promulgated Land and Forest Law, as you see here from 2019, offer unprecedented opportunities to recognize these rights in these areas. The MRLG Alliance in Laos is working on just that. They're working on how to recognize and hopefully how to formalize customary forest tenure under the new Land and Forest Law. we are working together with government partners and development partners in Laos. In Myanmar, there are large areas of land in the country that are held through customary or informal tenure. There seemed to be a shift, if only in written form, towards acknowledging that customary tenure systems and customary tenure practices should be protected. This shift was seen in the National Land Use Policy, where there are specific provisions that call for the increased rights for communities to practice customary tenure. Yet, customary tenure had not yet been operationalized in any existing legislation. Until this year, the drafting process of the national land law was actively progressing, and there were dedicated mechanisms in place to include provisions on customary tenure. In the meantime, communities are able to ensure they have interim protection over their tenure security by conducting customary tenure documentation. And lastly, on to Vietnam. In Vietnam, and this is a statistic from 2015, and I believe the presentation after this will update these statistics that I'm sharing. But in 2015, 26% of forest land had been allocated to individual households, but only 2% had been allocated to collective community management. This was through forest and forest land policies. State enterprises have been able to keep much of the better forest land. However, there have been rights granted for private agricultural and forest land use in the form of land use rights certificates, or what is commonly referred to as a red book. Although some argue that this has replaced some forms of customary tenure arrangements. The forest law in 2017 is the first legislation that requires communities to be that recognizes communities to be forest owners and gives priorities to forest allocation to customary communities who have customary use of these forests. However, these processes are still lacking procedural standards or guidelines, and it's important to recognize the restrictions on the community-based forest enterprise development. Our customary tenure workstream in Vietnam is working again on exactly these issues, on improving forest policy and ensuring tenure security and rights to financially benefit from forest areas for local communities. Now, as I said, I'm only able to provide a very short snapshot into what's happening on the ground in these countries. I would encourage all of you to please join the breakout group sessions after this session and after session 2 to hear more about what's happening on the ground from our Alliance members, but also would encourage you to join session 2 to hear more about regional initiatives. So this is my last slide, and this is something that I think I would appreciate everyone to take some time. These are some discussion points that I'd like to share with you. I'd like to leave you with some thoughts for the rest of the forum, really on the essence of rights and recognition of customary land use. The recognition of customary tenure mirrors the spectrum of rights within these systems. Recognition does not necessarily imply formalization, although it can be a part of the process. Recognition can range from documentation of customary tenure to informal agreements between local communities and local authorities. The formalization of customary tenure rights, or statutory tenure, can take many forms as well, from titling to registration to co-management agreements with local authorities. But it's important that we see this as a cycle. So we're going from recognition to formalization and back to full recognition. What does that mean? When recognized under statutory law, formalized tenure rights are seen as legally valid for governments and therefore can increase tenure security. However, in some cases, formalization of these rights may not be necessary if communities feel like their tenure rights are secure. While formalization is often lauded as the most secure form of tenure, for customary tenure systems, formalization may pose many risks to local communities. So after formalization, we want to close the circle going beyond formalization. As many of us know, formalization of tenure doesn't necessarily isn't synonymous with enforcement, isn't synonymous with tenure security. So to full recognition is when formalization of tenure can be implemented on the ground. Rights should not just be on paper, but like customary tenure systems, they need to take root and be grounded. These rights need to be guaranteed through accessible, inclusive, and transparent processes. To fully understand these terms, this process of full recognition, this process of full recognition, one has to understand the various challenges and opportunities in the region. At every step in the cycle, there will be challenges and opportunities. This forum and similar dialogues like this will push these issues into the limelight. Of course, we can't look at all of these challenges and opportunities in the silos, but must look at them as landscapes, as they are constantly evolving and changing, much like customary tenure systems. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to these issues, but rather tools and methodologies that can ensure accessible, scalable, and simple access to rights on the ground. I hope this leaves you with some inspiration, ideas, and questions that will enrich the breakout sessions. My very, very last slide, quickly, is just to say, if you would like to learn more about customary tenure, you can visit our website at mrlg.org, where we have many publications of our own, but also of our partners. You can feel free to contact me if you have any questions about these or if you have any questions about the sessions. I thank you all very much for your time, and I wish you a very fruitful forum, and I look forward to engaging with you all over the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And I know you said that this was just a snapshot, but I found that to be actually a very comprehensive background on customary tenure and some of the challenges and opportunities around forest tenure recognition in the region. Now, just a quick reminder before we move on to our next speaker, please use the chat box if you have any questions for the speakers. We're now going to hear from Villedad Sisulas from the German International Cooperation Agency, GIZ, on what are the new approaches that Lao PDR is testing for the statutory recognition of forest tenure rights.
First, let me introduce myself again. My name is Villedad. I'm working as the component team leader in the German land program in Laos, the component for land registration, customary tenure rights. So our program GIZ is working closely, like Natalia already presented a little bit on the allies of MRLG. So we part of that. We also work, like our own projects, but we work very closely with the MRLG and other partners, other development partners, including the governments, so that we make these efforts to ensure the synergy and complementarity. In the presentation today, I would like to give a little bit of the background, the situation of customary tenure rights in Laos, the situations, and then the legal framework, some experiences, and the way forward. Now let's take a look at the first slide. Next slide, please. Yes, so an overview of the customary tenure situation in Laos regarding the ethnic diversities. We have 49 officially recognized ethnic groups. By the way, in Laos, we don't use the term minorities, because okay, now I'm allowed to use the video. So in Laos, we don't use the term minorities because everyone supposed to be treated equally. Regarding the area of customary tenures, there can be safely assumed that this is big, even there's no official record how big they are, but based on the fact that the majorities or the large proportions of populations living in rural areas, which is the large areas, they are like subsistence farmers and heavily forest dependent, so we can assume that the large areas are under customary tenure regime in Laos. Regarding the term of customary, I think Natalia already mentioned a little bit differentiates between the countries. In Laos, no official document that certify the land use for both communal land, collective land, individual persons, ethnic groups, or every. It means not for indigenous people like we have experience from other countries only, but it applies to everyone and everywhere. But it is the fact that inside forest, most of the communities are under customary tenure. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Regarding the yes, the forest area. Now we look at the forest land. The government has the strategies, the policy strategies and plans to achieve 70% of both forest area and forest cover. So in the strategies, it set a very ambitious or significant policy goal to restore the country's forest cover to 70% by 2020. And we have the land use master plan, national land use master plan. Sometimes it is called the master land allocation plans, where specifically have the maps. As you can see in this slide, this is the map of the forest, different forest category in Laos. So altogether, according to the master plan that was approved by the National Assembly, 70%. What the consequences of that? You can see that more than 3,000 village community are inside the forest lands, or more than 200,000 families. So if the question is until now the tenure is recognized, that's the question, is accepted, but formalized is still not yet the case.
Customary tenure နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့
next slide, please. Yes, this is again now regarding the legal issues. You can see in the picture here is one of the village in our target area in Laos, that the whole village is inside forest. But if you look at the picture here, you would not believe that it is in the forest. But this is the situation and quite common in Laos, that we talk about 3,000 villages or communities inside the forest. So we have the two laws, like Natalia already mentioned earlier, the land laws and the forestry law that deal with. When we look at the land law, they have the article, specifically on customary tenure recognitions, and articles on the recognition of the right in the forest. Why the forestry law mention only the customary use of the forest, not the right. So in short, it is no clarity on formal tenure inside forest on both laws. Next, please. Let me elaborate a little bit. This is the pictures of the two laws on the left side. You can see here, and the examples of the one articles 44. We call it Article 44 regarding the recognitions of the rights in forest areas. So according to the law, that once people have established the settlement or living in the areas before the forest was recognized or was announced or defined as forest area, then the government would recognize their rights there, will protect the rights there. To do that, they just assign the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry to work closely with Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment, and other ministry, as well as local administrative authorities, to conduct the survey, collect information on the tenure rights, on the occupation, the use of the land, and then to reallocate, or to say that they should say which area can be recognized, which not, and under which tenure regime, something like that. And after that, they will report to the government for permission to issue the land use certificate. This is according to Article 44. But if you look at this, is okay, the government has to do something. It means that would take a very long process to do that. But this is linked to 70% of forest areas. That's why this is approved by the government, and the government had instruction on this master land use plan. That's why they need to say something. But when we work in practice, we would try to streamline the process and make ways to make the process much more efficient and quicker. So once the government give the green lights on that, so the Donore, the District Office of Natural Resource Environment, would be the one who issue the land use certificate. And now let's look at the pilot projects, especially of the MRLG, the Mekong Regional Land projects. The pilot was conducted in Common provinces. Of course, this is because it involved the two law, the land law and the forestry laws. Of course, the institutional mandates also lie with these two institutions. That's why the pilots involve the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment, and the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry to do the land use planning, the forestry, the forest management plannings, the survey, mapping, and data collections, and then keep the record in the system, like we call it the national database called Lao Land Rec. So the ultimate goal of this, of course, to issue a kind of formal documents that the two ministry agree on. Yeah. Now let's look at the lessons that we got from this pilot. Next slide, please. Yeah, some of the key lessons from this is that we can see also in these pictures that most of communities inside the forest area have long established a permanent settlement structure. If you look at this again, you would not believe that this is the forest, but in fact it is inside the forest area. And so that's why the two ministries just work on this, and they have agreement, they have consensus and MOU that the pilot should go here. Even the government doesn't have the way now at the moment. That's why the pilot like this would contribute to the future, that also support the governments to recognize. So this is more in terms of the formalizations and recognitions, I would say. So this is I would say the lesson from this is that sometimes the coordinations between ministries among ministry in Laos is challenged. So this pilot would also enhance that coordinations. Now, what if the land title, this is the permanent land use right or the highest ownership documents in land ownership document in Laos would be able to issue in this area? At this point in time, that's very unlikely. But in fact, when we discuss with the lawyers, there would be the possibility in the futures, but that means this kind of area must be excluded from the forest. So you need to delineate the forest boundaries and so on. And then, of course, you need to have some land in other places, not necessary to be in the same province or district, but to maintain this 70% target of forest cover and forest land, So regarding the non-permanent land use inside the forest or collective land, communal land, this is not very clear pathway how we go to recognize or formalize that tenure. Next, please. So apart from MRLG, there are also several other initiatives. I will not go into detail. We have Village Focus Internationals and Recop TC. You can go on the session, the next session, 1C for more detail. Regarding our program, the land program of GIZ, we have one program called Enhanced Land Tenure Security. About this, which is to secure the land customary tenures. What we do is also do this participatory land use plannings and agriculture planning in the forest areas, and then we also conduct similar things like the MRLG to do the pilot in the northern provinces of Laos. Like this year, we plan to cover 6 villages, and we introduce the technologies like the UAV, the drone for surveying and mappings, and include this awareness raising, conflict monitoring driven mechanisms in the process. So this is also to contribute to like the allies we work together. And we also hear some sovereign World Bank projects in this area also working on that. We have this triple L. Maybe you can look at the next session, and also what they call it, the carbon facility fund. Next slide, please. Regarding the way forward, the way forward, as we can see that the law did not provide enough details or clarity for the implementation. That's why a lot of work needs to be on this. Basically, we need clear sub-legislations in form of guidelines, instructions. This legal framework is needed. In our on our NFGIZ, we also work very closely with our partners like MRLG and other to come up with our goal is to come up with a kind of the draft of the first draft of the legally compliant procedure to be in place and then to be worked on together with with everyone. So we think that this is a very high interest of other donors, like the bigger initiatives like the World Bank projects and the German Development Bank project or land legislation is on the horizon now, but the first phase they would focus on the systematic land legislation in the area outside the forest, because once these things are clear in the forest, so the next phase of those projects would go to this recognition. So of course then the capacity development for the governments and the implementer would be very crucial. Yeah, that's from what I would like to share. I'm happy to discuss when it comes to the session. Yeah, thanks very much for your attention and participation.
Thank you so much, Vildat, for sharing the experience in Laos and, of course, the details of the pilot program as well. Now, our third speaker is Ngo Van Hong from the Center for Highland Natural Resource Governance Research. Now, it is a local association in Vietnam that supports Indigenous people's rights. He's going to be talking about some experiences of community-based forest management in Vietnam.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Then, can you hear me? Okay, yes, very good. So organizer, please show my slide. Okay, yes. So my name is Hong. I'm from the Center for Highland Natural Resources Governance Research in Vietnam, and also a director of Forest Land Alliance. Then we focus on the we have been spent a lot of time for researching and working with minority people, also promote the community forest in our country. The topic today, I would like to present opportunity and challenges of community-based forests in Vietnam. Then, of course, from my colleagues from Laos, Slovakia, we also detail in our break group discussion after this session. Kindly visit our group and discuss and learn more, get more information about that in the group discussion. And please share. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, yes. Firstly, I would provide some information about forest and customary tenure in Vietnam. May you know the total area of forest land around 15 million hectares, and nearly 2/3 of the total country land. And there are millions of people and households we are living on the forest in terms of and depending on forest in terms of economic, in terms of livelihood, in terms of social, as well as in terms of environment. Among them, there are 1.26 million hectares of forest land, maybe occupy 8% of total forest land is managing and controlling by nearly 12,100 community forest, I can say CFM groups over the country. Yes, then something is similar from Laos country. Vietnam is a high ethnic diversity. There is 54 official recognition of ethnic groups in our country. And for generation, ethnic people have a strong relationship with nature. Not only ethnic people, but also king majority people too. Yes, we are living near and inside the forest, inside different category of the forest in our country. So land that can explain why land and forest become an important part in our life. Can you move slide, please? Next slide, please. Then, yes, then this slide, I would like to provide something, about the policy community forest in Vietnam. Then, may you know, based on the traditional knowledge, experiences, and exploration of community to increase capacity, strengthen cooperation with the forest authority and sustainability many forest areas. And the concept of community forest was officially recognized by government in 2004 in the forestry law and land law. However, up to 2017, with the new forestry law, the policy and law on the land and forest allocation to household and community prioritize and different thing mentioned emphasis different thing is this law. I think it's a very, very good law. And the most important thing in legal framework of our country is transition from state forest to social forestry. Yeah. Then of course, there are a lot of progress inside this policy, this land, this forestry, this community, this land law and forestry law. However, there are some a lot of challenges. I will mention as next slide, please. So inside the forestry law, I want to say something about this law. Then forestry law took effect in January 2019, and of course, it replaced a 2004 law on forest protection and development. Then something I think Ms. Natalie had presented as a previous slide. Yet, of course, this law provides important legal based on establishment of the forest under the long-term use of management of ethnic people and also the local communities. So when receive the red book, the people or community will receive during 50 years, so very, very long. And also the other thing is a recognition and customary practices of the local communities. Give a prioritize of forest allocation to ethnic people and community who have a same custom, traditional culture, belief, and customary rule associated with the forest use. So this mentioned on the article 14.8. And the other important thing is the first time in the forest legislation recognize that community be forest owner. There's nothing before, so that means before the community also managing different forest areas. However, they not recognize a forest owner, so they are like the other group. And in this law, defining community as a group living in the same village and having same custom and tradition. Then may you remember as the first slide I provide you, there are more than 1.2 million hectares of forest are managing and controlling by the community. However, among them, that only 405,000 hectares will receive the land rights certificate from the local authority, from the government, because there are a lot of things we need to show in the future. Kindly move to next slide. Then from 2014, for 2014 and 16, we had research about the community forest, and up to now we also see some problems. I think some challenges related to community forest management in our country. You can see in the given graph, you can see the big problem about the community forest management is a legal framework. That's our survey based on the a number answer from different community around our country. They say the big problem is illegal framework. That means, of course, there are a lot open things inside the forestry law. However, there are some overlapping and something not clear in the other law. For example, civil code law, and also some things in land law, or something and the other law. Yet that I think there are some obstacles to allow the forest, community forest to community. And the other thing, the people often afraid about the budget. Of course, they don't have a lot of money for controlling and managing the forest. And also there are important thing, challenges is harvesting the product because the government have a ban to employ the forest product. So especially the logging, then they cannot accept that money from the forest. And they also there are some article about that. And also the other important thing I would mention about that although strong the relationship, we see strong relationship inside the community. However, the relationship inside and outside community is very weak. So that means some communities they don't know, they don't see any support from the district people or some higher level. Yes, that also there are a lot of challenges now. People and community first are facing with. Move next slide, please. And I have mentioned about the next slide, please. Yes. For the other thing I want to mention about in this my presentation. May you know, since 2017, after getting a lot of successful in advocacy for forestry law in terms of community forest and also in terms of allocation land and forest to the local people, in terms of right for the manager for forest ownership. So we support from the MRLG project we set up. We work as a work team, city work customary tenure work team, and implementing one project called the supporting forestry law 2017 implementation in order to improve understanding the local authority and community on the right and duties of the local communities and benefit to forest local community. So of course, we carrying out different components on in terms of policy, improving on article, on degree or something. Later, our colleagues from the VN Forest will present about that. And we also apply in different models in Quang Binh province, a central province, and also in Hoa Binh province in the northern, and the other province in the Dak Lak province in the Highland Central. Then in Quang Binh province, we apply the model of community forest enterprise with Malian ethnic group. We focus in bamboo shoot products and dry bamboo shoot product with and get a lot of achievement. I would like to say the get fly in color in our project. And the other model in Hoa Binh province, one member of City Alliance, we together with Mueang community set up the tea shanty cooperative. You see in the picture they show different kind of tea, and I think you can see a lot of smile in those farmer, farmer, local ethnic people, women. Yet we think a lot of successful thing in this model. We can see in the detail of group discussion. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. From our pilot model, we can see some different important things about the community forest enterprise. May you know the community forest in enterprise is the main forest policy model. And the forest is an important sort of timber, non-timber, and ecosystem service. And some model of CFE, I think, is the first model. Is not so much model in Vietnam, and this is important initiative from the MRLG partner in Vietnam. And the other thing we see the CFM also the vehicle for sustainable forest management for permitting local people to create jobs and generate income and improve livelihood. And also CFE organize motivates people for a common goal of the conservation and livelihood environment, and also can help manage forest well in terms of forest enrichment, and also in terms of maintaining the forest law. I think it's a very good model, very good model within the promoting implementation of forestry law 2017. Next slide, please. Then, yes, we also based on our pilot model, and also from the other component in terms of legal framework policy. We also have that. We also think about there are some different lessons learned we should show in the future. May you know, greater recognition of tenure rights of the local people and also indigenous people is needed, because the pressure from the agro-industrial expansion from the company, from the industrialization and infrastructure, and how to promote the allocation to the local people, not only the people who are lacking land and forest, but also for the people, for the community people, they are under pressure with the livelihood, and they need more land and forest to control and to create the income, and also they want to protect the forest. And the other thing, we concerned about how to apply the existing knowledge and model of community forest management to improve outcome. And the other thing, we also see the community forest enterprise is a good model under the City Alliance for improving livelihood and maintaining the cultural identity and governance. However, we think about does the community have enough the capacity to deal with the market competition and also to maintain the sustainable resource management. And there are many challenges in the future. And the other thing we concern about the legal framework. Yes, of course, there are a lot of things on the overlapping and weakening of the legal framework and lacking something. We need to improve how our government and also some support from the other donor to help to solve this problem. And finally, I want to mention about strengthening the knowledge and capacity for the community on law enforcement, technical forest enrichment, forest governance, and also how to maintain the sustainable forest management. Also needs improving the capacity for the local people. So that's my presentation for copyright. Thank you for listening. That's all. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hong, for taking us through the new forest law in Vietnam, the challenges around community forest management, and a very interesting model around the community forest enterprises. We're now going to move on to the panel discussion and Q&A. Antoine Delaine, who is the deputy team leader from the MRLG, will be moderating the discussion with two experts from the Mekong region. We have Mr. Bupon Sangtong, the acting director general from Laos Department of Forestry, and Mr. Din Van Tuan from Vietnam's Forest Protection Department. Over to you, Antoine.
So thank you very much, Martin Lewin. We had actually three very great speakers who have well introduced the subject of customary tenure in the region. And we have now two panelists with really great experience, both at policy level, but also really in the field, engaging with communities on the ground. So I will first turn to Mr. Bunpon Sangtong. Here in Laos, so as you say, the acting director general of the Forest Department, and more than that, someone with more than 20 years of experience in the forest sector and in the participatory sustainable management of forests. So, Mr. Bunpon, I would like to hear from you, what are your views about the recognition of customary tenure in your country? Have you heard inspiring ideas from the earlier presentation about forest tenure recognition in Laos and forest allocation in Vietnam? How do you assess the efforts in your country to recognize and formalize customary forest tenure rights?
I would like to thank to Mr. Viradet Sisulat, the representative of the GIZ in Lao PDR, who present about the experience in the status recognition of the foreign tenure rights. So I really agree that he tried to explain very detailed, and that's exactly the status of the Lao PDR in terms of the customary use of land. So nowadays the government have the policy like first we have to collect data for the people or the community who are living inside the forest area. So not only how big areas or how many parcels of the land, but we have to collect when they stay in that area. So one thing, because actually, as you're aware that in Lao PDR, there are 3 forest categories. As there are one is by the protected area. The second one is protection forest area, and the third one is production forest area. And these 3 forest category here have been established different times. For example, that for the protected area have been the first establishment is in 1993. So the second one is the production forest areas. We established during 2008, and for the protection forest, it's very soon here, probably in 10 years or even less than 10 years. So for this, we have to collect the data in the field. I mean that the community or the villagers, when they are live there, I mean, what year they are living inside the forest area. If before the establishment of the 3 forest categories, so we should recognize them and refer to the forestry law and even land law. Now, we are not yet to issue the land tiling to the individual and people who are living inside the 3 forest category, but we still recognize there are customary use of land. So I think for our PDR, the land tiling will come soon to issue for the people who are living there, but I mean only the permanent agricultural land and the what we call the construction area that we can give the land tiling, but for the forest area we cannot. We just we will give the permission for them to use, but not land tiling. In Lao we call the what's that? The yellow certificate. If we give them the yellow certificate, so they can sell. So it's not the way to recognize their customary use of land. So I think, but for the Vietnam, I think they are present. I think they allocate the forest land to the villagers to maintain or to use the land, but do not disturb to the forest. That's one policy of Vietnam. I think it also the very good policy. But in Laos here, I think the government, I think, effort to come to the when we are ready to give them the certificate. I mean, because now, as the presenter will already present to you, they are there's a project under the MRLG to test how to collect the data, and if the method or the approach is useful, so we have a kind of instruction or even higher level to issue the instruction how the step or how to issue the land titling for the community who are living inside the forest area. So I hope in the near future, 1 or 2 years later, we can even how can we call? Probably we can hear the good news for this for Lao PDR. So I don't know. This my comment is okay. You got the point, and I don't know exactly how many times give me to explain you.
Thank you
for this stage, and if you have.
Yes, so sorry, Mr. Thank you very much for your words and your very positive tone. I particularly appreciate that Lao government is actually looking to the experience of Vietnam. And I think there is much to learn between the two countries, and also this commitment, at least in principle, to recognize customary tenure of people, but still looking at what are the proper revenue in technical terms together with MRLG project. And we are very proud of this collaboration and hopeful for what will come in the coming years, as you say. So thank you very much for these words. And I'd like now to turn to our second panelist, Mr. Thuyen Van Dinh, who works for the Forest Protection Department of Vietnam Administration of Forestry.
Thank you.
Again, he is someone with extensive field-based experience on environment, natural resource, climate change, but also conducting research and implementing projects on conservation. And he has worked very closely with numerous ethnic minority on the ground. So, and I can add also that is the national focal point of the ASEAN Working Group on Social Forestry, which we will mention this afternoon. So, Mr. Thuyen Van Dinh, given your experience, I'd like to ask you the same question I have asked earlier. So what are your views about the recognition of customary tenure in your country? How do you assess the effort of your country to recognize and formalize customary forest tenures? What have been the progress, and what are the challenges ahead? And the floor is yours, please.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. So my name is Dinh Văn Tuyến. I'm working for Forest Protection Department, which is MRLG project focal point agencies under Vietnam Administration of Forestry. So the MRLG project and its partners have supported us in promoting the implementation of forestry law on CFM. Through providing technical guidance, CFM is considered as one of the important forest management approaches in Vietnam. So the status of CFM is shared by Mr. Ngo Văn Hong so in quite detail in his presentation. So I don't want to waste my time on this master. And I have some other point to share with own participation. So as you know, on the 1st of April 2021, the Prime Minister approved the Vietnam's forestry development strategy for the period of 2021 to 2030 with a vision to 2050. There are three important social objectives of strategy. The first, in the 2025, there is about 50% of total mountainous household involve commercial forestry production. And in 2030, there are about 80% of the total mountainous household involve commercial forestry production. And the second objective will increase the average income of ethnic people twice in comparison with its in 2020 and decrease the poverty household rate as 3% per year. Regarding ethnic minority people, the strategy also highlight the vision of forestry sector to 2050 is to preserve the traditional cultural identity and survival area of the ethnic minorities. And currently within the framework of the MRLG project activity and support from the MRLG partner. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yes, okay. Within the framework MRLG project activity and with support from MRLG partner, we aim to develop a handbook of guidelines on community-based forest management. The handbook of guidelines will be issued and distributed to the local authority and local forest ranger departments. This activity also contributes to improve capacity of forestry state management agency at all levels and communities located forest in forest management and protection. The document gathers and details existing legal document regulation related to CFM, as well as the experience of community forest management models. The content of this document will consist of three main components. The first component about the general regulation on CFM. The second, some detailed regulation on CFM, such as for forest allocation procedure, or how to develop plans for sustainable forest management and forest fire prevention plans. And the last could be some lesson learned in CFM. So the document will contribute to help the community to secure their forest and land rights and how to improve their forest management. Finally, I would like to express my sincere thanks to MRLG project and its partners who have great effort to organize these events. This is actually a great idea for all participants, stakeholders to share and learn valuable experience during the forum, and who have to all of you wish the forum have great success. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thuyen, for these really inspiring words and for your support also for MRLG in the collaboration, the good collaboration. We are running a little bit over time. Nevertheless, I think it would be a big miss not to have the opportunity to ask at least very few questions to the speakers. And I think we have a first question from Yara from Cambodia, where she is asking Mr. Villadet. Mr. Villadet, when you assist communities to register as indigenous land, do they face challenge with overlapping jurisdiction with the ministries? For example, Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Agriculture or state lands have different responsibilities, or there is overlapping rights and jurisdictions. How do you manage this case in Laos? I think that's quite an interesting question. Villadet, do you have some feedback to us?
Maybe a quick feedback on that. What I can say is that when we do this field exercise on, the field exercise, we involve like the two ministries mainly, Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Land, Natural Resource Environment, where the land department is under the Monterey. So we involve the two ministry and we do the process together. It also involve other, sometimes it concerns in ethnicity. We involve the so-called National Front for development, for Lao Front for National Development, and also the Lao Women Unions when it comes to gender issue. Basically, like I said in my presentations, we are not focusing on indigenous people specifically, but in general. But when this question comes, we always, like tackle it case by case basis. Regarding the question of the overlapping or jurisdiction, sometimes we face that in practice. For example, when the boundary is not very clear, the forest boundary was not clear when then we sometimes did not involve enough the forestry department, and sometimes just before we go to the process, and we have someone just telling, well, we have to do this to this area, and then it's just when we have to suspend the activities and start it over on that particular. But to be honest, this is the communal land or collective land for indigenous is not that clear experience from outside. We do it quite, general, but we tackle the issue case by case basis when we face this. Yeah. Maybe just for the moment, right?
Easy to make a statement on these issues in different countries. Now, I'd like to turn to Natalie, and I think because this is a very general question that cover issues, broad issues about customary tenure. We have Edwin Payuan from RECOFTC, who has a question for you, and he say, should the protection of the rights also be emphasized in addition to recognition and formalization? And personally, I think in discussion regarding the protection of customary rights, we see very much in the region that a lot of effort is made in terms of legal protection, documentation, providing titles or certificates. But what then happens if there are litigation, if there are problems? And this is often where the actual protection of these rights is sometimes lacking. What is your opinion about that, Natalie?
Thanks, Antoine. I'll just take my video off here. Yes, I think, and I hope to have addressed this a little bit in the presentation. As I said, it was an overview, so it was very difficult to address everything and the various complexities around customary tenure. But protection of rights is key, and something that I shared are these practices of interim protection measures, which is very much what we see as what can be done in the meantime before formalization for communities to protect their rights, and that goes hand in hand with recognition. Often, for some examples from Myanmar, actually, from the customary tenure documentation, was that these documentation processes actually helped communities protect their land against various different vested interests and actors who were approaching them and wanting to engage the community. So there are various different options. I think the comment is very apt for the conversation. Protection is absolutely critical, and there are many different options. Often also, if you look within customary tenure systems, there are traditional grievance redress mechanisms that are embedded in these institutions. But what's important for us to think about throughout the day, and the forum today as well, is to how to better institutionalize these grievance redress mechanisms. And that is both in policy and practice. I hope that answered your question, Antoine.
As I say, that was a question.
Or Edwin.
Yeah. Yeah, we have Edwin. Edwin, if you want to say one word.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. I think we can have further discussions on that. I'm not looking at ultimate title because there are some countries that may not progress to title but still need protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edwin, and for this also useful remark. I have many more questions coming up in front of me, and I have to apologize to everyone because I think we are running out of time, and I'd like to give a break to everyone. We are here discussing since 2 hours or over 2 hours. So I we will try to respond those questions and share the answer. We will see in which format we will do that, but we are taking note of all the questions and we will go back to the speakers for them to share their answers. But I would like now to turn back to Martin Lewin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to all the speakers here.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Antoine, and all the speakers as well. And just like to reiterate Antoine's apologies that we aren't able to take more questions because we are running a little bit over time, but we're trying to catch up. So we're going to now have a short break, but I have two very important messages for you before you go. Number one, we are conducting a poll each day. And today's poll is about what you think are the most important issues and solutions regarding the recognition of customary tenure. And we will post a link to the poll in the chat box, and the poll is open all day. Number two, we will be having breakout group discussions immediately after the break. And they are all going to be under different Zoom links. You can find them in the Hoover agenda or on the web page for the event on the LAN portal website. So please make sure you have the correct Zoom links for your breakout sessions. Now, the breakout sessions will start as planned at 11:15, if I understand correctly. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And we have about 10 breakout sessions that's going to be looking at the different aspects of forest tenure recognition and at different levels. So it should be a rich and interactive discussion. Now, some of the country level breakout sessions will be conducted in local languages, as I said earlier, but there will be English translation for all sessions. Now, the breakout sessions will last for about 45 minutes, after which you will have another short break before rejoining the plenary for key takeaways. See you after the breaks and the breakout sessions. Enjoy. Thank you. I think Akiko is already here, so maybe we will start the last and final part of this session. Again, if you're just logging back in, welcome back to the plenary. And I hope you had a great discussion during the breakout sessions. I listened into one of them and it became quite lively, as the discussion went on. So I'm sure many are still having the discussions and migrating into here. And I was also very happy to find out that the interpretation now works during the breakout sessions. And I'm sure when we start session 2 after lunch, hopefully the technical glitches will all be resolved. Now, we are going to have the last part of the first session, and Akiko Inoguchi from the FAO in Laos will be giving us her thoughts on the key takeaways and plans for further actions when it comes to customary and collective forest tenure in the Mekong region. Akiko?
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to share screen.
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. I hope you can hear me and see my screen, and I am putting it in presentation mode. I think you can see my non-presentation mode screen. Is that right?
Yes, Akiko, we can see the non-presentation screen.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Let's see if I can change that by doing this. Does that work? How's that? No.
フルスクリーンという下にありますか?
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Akiko. I'm working for FAO. I'm based in Vientiane, Lao PDR, and I've been in the region for quite some time now, almost 2 decades before I know it. I hope, first of all, I recognize I'm standing between you and lunch, so I'll try to keep this fairly straightforward, simple, and most importantly, short. What a morning it's been. Thanks to all of the organizers. Let's admit it, it's been a bit of a chaos for everybody, I think, trying to understand what's going on with the IT and all. But, I think we're all in the boat together. It's difficult times for all of us. And I think that if there's anything we're learning, we're all learning together to cope with the new constraints and circumstances. So I'm not feeling at all fazed about what happened this morning with the translation over speaking over other messages. I think it's really great that we've all overcome it. We're still 130 people in the call in the meeting, so I think it's all been very good. And I thought that it was great that because of that, there were so many discussions happening in the chat box, things that I don't usually see happening in chat boxes, like telling Micah that he's speaking too fast, or other things that people I think are feeling a lot more comfortable using the chat box to communicate. Anyway, my role is to communicate to you what the key takeaways from today have been. So from today's morning session have been, and the session is, as you know, about forest customary tenure in the Mekong region. So what I'm going to do is actually just show you a couple of images and a few text. And it's everything, if you've been attentive in this morning session, that you've already seen and you've already heard. Because I think there's been a lot of important things that I've said, and what we need to do now is time to reflect and to really absorb. First thing Natalie said was that customary tenure is difficult to define, and it looks different for different contexts. We've also, this is an image that I took from a presentation by Hong from Vietnam in the morning session, and he said that for generations, ethnic minorities have been basically almost self-sufficient, supporting their daily livelihoods, diets, land and forest use, and spiritual needs. Sorry, kids, out, please. Excuse me. Yeah, so diversity, but also it's about the customary, it's about the traditional use, it's about the norms and the rules set within the community by different groups of people, about their relationship with land and with the resources is the way that it's been defined. So in a nutshell, I think there's a lot of cases of customary tenure that we've heard about that would come under the definition of being sustainable. The next image that I'd like to share with you is something that I took and zoomed in from Natalie's presentation. And here, one of the key words I thought we should be reflecting on is actually shifting cultivation, or rotational agriculture. Agroforestry is the way Natalie referred to it. This is an image from Myanmar, as I understand. Let's all reflect that actually when we talk about forest and we talk about customary, in this region, we're really talking about a lot of interactions through what we call shifting cultivation, rotational agroforestry, swidden agriculture, in ways that can happen, in various ways that it can happen. A lot of it can be sustainable, and a lot of it has recently become unsustainable for various reasons. The next image that I'd like to share with you, and I've again zoomed in here, this is from Villadet from Laos, his presentation. And what I've done here by zooming is I am hoping to give you a full screen of what he was showing here. This is the map of the 3 forest categories in Laos, as Villadet introduced. So the red, the light green, and the kind of the brighter green, they're all forests. And you can see on the bigger map, those dots, they are all villages. So his point was there's a lot of overlap between existing villages and forest areas. And then he said, most communities inside forest land are under customary tenure regimes, but no clarity, that is in the legal legislation, on formal tenure inside forests. This slide, took again from Natalie, I thought was bringing to the discussion 2 really important words. And she put a full circle going back from originating from recognition, going through formalization and going back to recognition. And she told us about the full circle. We heard that at present, many countries and many circumstances, recognition is actually the reality. But in the breakout session that I participated in, we talked about self-recognition. And as well as statutory, legal, and legal recognition. I feel it's not just 3 categories. I feel it's a spectrum of different types of recognition that we could talk about. And also formalization. I feel it's also a spectrum of different degrees of formalization, and statutory, legal recognition, full recognition, registration being at one end of that spectrum. We also heard through some of the chat messages an interesting comment from Cambodia. I captured community land tenure is a formal recognition by government, and I thought that was particularly interesting. But probably this resonates with a lot of people's thinking. You know, when we say customary land tenure, it has to be formally recognized. On the other hand, I had an interesting conversation with some Lao-based colleagues the other day, and one of my colleagues introduced to us that in Germany, once a customary tenure is formalized, statutorily recognized, it's no longer customary. So some different views on that. And then Natalie also talked about formalization. It can sometimes cause problems. So it's not always the answer, and it's sometimes a form of recognition that we might be aiming for. So different circumstances, different answers. This is the image taken from Hong's presentation again for Vietnam, and he introduced the 2017 forestry law, and he told us some great things that are happening through this process that gives priority of forest allocations to ethnic minorities and communities who have customs, traditions, culture, beliefs, and customary rules associated with forest use. I think that tells us that Vietnam's come a great long distance and is doing a great job towards a formalization of customary tenure. And this, another photo from Hong's presentation, and where he emphasized community forest enterprises as being one of the things that's coming out of this whole process in several of the communities and provinces in Vietnam, where it's starting to make sense, not just for their land rights, but also economically by providing them an income through an enterprise that's selling certain non-timber forest products. And my final photo is this one from Natalie again, Natalie's presentation. And I put this here, and I'm going to connect it back to what Hong said. He says smiles in the ethnic people. It's an important aspect, and he thinks that, and he says that this is important. He's starting to see smiles as a result of customary recognition tenure. And that is it from me. But I do want to leave you with this. Our MC has already introduced to us that there is a poll that's running. I understand it's running until Friday. The instructions are, please, to take a photo of the screen because you want to capture that 8-digit number in the middle of the screen, and go to www.menti.com to enter into that poll, and you have to enter that 8-digit into the ID, into the code section to participate in that poll. Otherwise, I think it's time for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that great summary, Akiko, and for reiterating the poll as well. Now, like Akiko said, we are going to have a lunch break, but please listen carefully because we were having a little bit of confusion just now during the breakout sessions. And also I've already seen some questions on the chat box over what's going to happen after the lunch break. We will start session 2 at 2 p.m. after the lunch break. Now, that session, the second session, will be looking at trends in customary forest tenure recognition, both in this region and globally. But that session will be on a new Zoom link. Again, can I just repeat that it will be on a new Zoom link, and you will need that to log into session 2. You can find that link on the WOBA app or on the agenda. Now, enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you back at 2 p.m. Thank you.